police in Las Vegas found themselves in the middle of a UFO mystery last month after
To us, big eyes. They have big eyes.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal? Or?
One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious.
What sign? I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Okay, hang on.
He's right.
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
Mythical Legends Podcast with your host Daniel Barnett.
On to the Mythical Legends Podcast. As usual, I have my dad Craig with us. Hi, Dad.
Hi, Daniel. How you doing?
For those who are joining us for the first time, hello. My name is Daniel Barnett, and I am 14 years old from the UK. I'm very, very new to the podcasting world, but I'm fascinated by all the cryptids and legends and myths, especially Bigfoot. This podcast is aimed at learning all about the fascinating subject and helping others to follow their dreams. Today we have a fantastic guest, Kathy Strain, a West Coast Sasquatch researcher who studies the role of Bigfoot and Native American cultures. Kathy is also the author of Giants, Cannibals and Monsters, Bigfoot in Native Culture, a book of stories about the hairy man. Thank you for spending time with me today, Kathy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, yeah. Where are you based right now?
I am in Sonora, California.
Oh, wow.
So if anybody knows where Yosemite National Park is, I am about just an hour west of it.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful country.
Could you tell our listeners about the studies within Native American culture and how it got started and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. When I was a little girl, I saw Legend of Boggy Creek on television, and I absolutely adored the movie. I thought the idea of having a mystery out there that nobody could solve was very intriguing to me. And so when I was in 5th grade, I asked my teacher how I could study Bigfoot for a living. And she said, you have to go into anthropology. And so that's what I did. I just followed my dreams, and I have a bachelor's and a master's in anthropology. And I figured it out that you couldn't do it for a living, that nobody was going to pay me to do that. But I always grew up outdoors. My family traveled every summer to camp, and I've been to practically every national park, every state park in the area. I mean, we just always were outside hiking, camping, that kind of stuff. So it was already a good fit for me to be an anthropologist because I was introduced to that stuff really early. And the whole mix of believing in Bigfoot and working with Native Americans happened when I was an archaeologist with the Sequoia National Forest, and I was working with the tribal elders of the Tule River Indian Reservation. We were doing an excavation, and I wanted their input on what if we found human remains, what if we found this, kind of thing. And they were intrigued by me in the sense that I was very open to hearing what they had to say. And we talked about what are the famous painted rock pictographs, which depict hairy man, hairy woman, and the baby, and the stories that went with it. And so, they told me those stories. We went and visited it, and I just became intrigued on, of course, back in those days, of course, I'm an old timer. We only had that one TV with the 3 channels. I only believe that Bigfoot was found in Pacific Northwest, like most people thought, that it was just California, Oregon, Washington, a little bit into Canada. And so it wasn't until I don't remember the year anymore, but I was asked to give a presentation for the University of Texas, San Antonio. And I thought, well, if I'm going to talk in Texas, I probably should talk about Texas tribes. I shouldn't just talk about California tribes. And I found all these stories. I found all these belief systems that I didn't know it existed outside of the Pacific Northwest. And so that's what kind of broadened my eyes and became the basis of the book, was Bigfoot isn't isolated to just the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, amazing. Kathy, have you ever experienced a Bigfoot or Sasquatch or anything else?
Oh yeah. I did. I have seen 4 individuals on 3 different times. The first time was in 2012 in Oklahoma. I was there. There's a group called the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, NAWAC, and they had invited me and my husband to come there to basically, give our unbiased opinion on this location. And it's called Area X, but it's not called Area X for any, particular reason other than they were studying 3 different places, and it was X, Y, and Z. And it just happened to be that X actually had the most activity and Y and Z had nothing. And so we went there just on like a little family vacation to have this, verify if this area was any good. And we were there for about a week, and the first day was just boring, hot. Texas is in May. It's actually Oklahoma. Oklahoma is really hot and steamy. It's like taking a sauna for all day long. It's just pretty horrible. And we had been hearing it's a group of 4 cabins, and they have tin roofs, and something was throwing rocks onto the tin roofs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we were going from house to cabin to figure out what is throwing these rocks, because we could see the rocks on the roof. So we knew they were rocks, and only people or Bigfoots have hands that can, throw rocks. And so after a little bit, I got kind of tired in that heat to be running around. And this is in early May. So I said, hey, I'm just going to stay back at our host cabin. And this isn't like a rental cabin. This is probably one of the barely considered standing cabin. So they're just not in very good shape, and they, spiders and there's snakes in the cabin. I mean, I could tell you some stories of things I killed in the cabin, but finally we all come back and we're sitting down. It's about 6 o'clock. It's, it's broad daylight, just sunny as it could be. And we start hearing something rustling, and we were like, oh, we just think that's the fox that we've been feeding and just coming back for seconds, and all of a sudden there they are, and they're coming right at us, and it's a big one and a little one. And I had the impression that it was a sister and her bratty little brother, because even though she's tall, she's really skinny, length, kind of not fully grown, and they're walking towards us along this hillside. And they obviously didn't know we were there, and it was clear the big one was trying to get the little one to go with her away from us, go up the hill or something. And the little one was determined to get closer. And all of a sudden I jumped up and I said, there they are. And I ran at them. And of course that caused them to bolt up the hillside faster than anything I've ever seen in my life. It was just like the wind, they were noisy coming at us, but once they went up the hill, it was just silence. And the big one never even turned to look if the little one was following her or anything. She just bolted, and he bolted too. And there was 5 of us there, and 4 of us all saw the same thing. And the 5th one, he had his view blocked by an outhouse. And so it was an amazing sighting, because I was very close, and I got to see focused on the big one and looked at its body structure because I knew I didn't have much time. You can't look at both of them at the same time. And so I just looked at the big one, and she just was all muscles. She was just, even though she was skinny and kind of gangly, she was still just full of muscle. Her legs were powerful. She had a beautiful muscular buttocks, and it was just really super cool.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Kathy, just going back to the tribe side of it, how do the tribes kind of view the hairy man or Bigfoot? You know, if you think of I know there was the rock paintings and things like this. Is he seen as a god, or is it how involved in their culture is the hairy man?
Well, in California by itself, I think there's like 261 tribes just in California. And so across the nations, we're talking 1,000, if not more than that. I don't know the exact count because we have new tribes being federally recognized all the time. So every tribe has a different viewpoint. So for some, he's a friend. To others, he's an absolute enemy. And so it depends on the tribe. And so for the Tule River, which the hairy man pictographs are on their reservation, he is a creator, not a god, not the god. He's just a creator that helped. The traditional story is that he helped create man in the cave where the paintings are, and all the animals that help make man. That's why their paintings are there. They painted themselves so that man would remember what they did for him. And so, but then my tribe that I work with on a near daily basis, the Miwok, he's a cannibal. He eats the children. And so you treat him respectfully, but you never look him in the eye, and you just let him have his territory and you stay in your territory. And you just don't try never to interact with him because he's not a friend. And so it's kind of interesting that the Tule River and the Miwok are actually pretty close in relation to each other in the sense of landscape and stuff like that, but they have a completely different viewpoint on what he is. And so how that happens, I don't know. And it's one interesting thing about the Tule as well is that Bigfoot or hairy man is so important to them. They have a song, but he has to come take when an elder dies. He's the one that comes and gets their soul and takes them over to the other side, and so he has to be present in order to do that. And so a lot of sightings actually happen around the time of when an elder passes away. There's sightings that happen on the reservation of seeing a physical Bigfoot.
Wow. And I think for because obviously when Daniel's been researching this, it's kind of everything started from that film in the 60s, I believe.
Yeah,
the and it's really
Gimlin film.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, especially with Daniel, to hear, how far back this goes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I do most of the time when I give talks at conferences or whatever. That's what I talk about is to think that Bigfoot started in if Bigfoot, the term, of course, is related to Jerry Crew and those first footprints that were found in the 1950s in the Willow Creek area. But we have all kinds of information, like the hairy man pictographs. We actually have a photo of it from the 1800s. Wow. And we have masks, and we have dances, and we have totem poles and baskets and all kinds of stuff that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. And so it's not, Europeans didn't invent Bigfoot and bring it over to the United States, and so if anything, which I also don't believe, Native Americans convinced recent settlers that Bigfoot existed, and they started seeing things they're making up. But I don't believe that either. I think these are Bigfoot. I believe Bigfoot really exists, and Europeans, settlers, found it out for themselves, and Native American were telling them this entire time, hey, there's this thing out there that you can So, and we actually have that where, there's stories, especially around Bluff Creek, where actually there's a really famous Bigfoot story, not famous, I guess, but a story directly related to Bluff Creek that Native American people would talk about. And so they had been telling Jerry Crew and those around them that, hey, you guys better be careful out here. And uh, that is the Six River National Forest, and it was the last national forest that allowed timber harvesting. So, like, my national forest had been timber harvesting easily since the 30s, 20s, that kind of thing. But Six Rivers was so remote, it just didn't have any roads. It didn't have anything. And so they didn't even start harvesting timber for production of, wood for homes and stuff until that 1950s. That's why Jerry Crew was out there, was he was starting to build a road so they could get access to the timber. And so if you can imagine an area that was basically humans hadn't pushed their way into as late as the 1950s, I can imagine that Bigfoot wouldn't be particularly happy about that. And I think that was probably why they had so many problems.
That story was absolutely incredible. But going back to your son, Kathy, were you scared?
No, I wasn't scared. I think afterwards, I had a little bit of a meltdown because my body was going into shock, in the sense of, here's something I believed in since I was a little girl, and here we are, 40 years later, finally getting a sighting, and all that overwhelming me in the sense of, they're real. I knew they were real, but they're fast. And I think the speed of them kind of took me off guard, in the sense of, if that had been a large male who decided I was a child, because I'm only 5'2" and I sound like a kid. If he had decided to just pick me up and run with me, I don't know that anybody could do anything about it. And I think that kind of just shocked me into I don't think we fully understand what we're dealing with. That it's clearly an animal. I mean, we're animals, but this is clearly an animal. It's flesh and blood, but we're in its element. So our element now is, of course, homes with air conditioning and cell phones and all that stuff. And his element is out there, and we're no competition for that species at all.
Yeah. What were your family reactions when you told them about your experiences?
Well, my husband was with me, so he saw exactly what I did. So that's not anything too interesting, I guess. But my my mom and dad, they were just, I think every time I saw my mom and dad from a little while afterwards, would go, tell us again what happened, So my mom was always one of my biggest fans, in the sense of listening to every podcast I've ever been on, watching every show I've ever been on. So they were everybody's very accepting. Probably not so much. Maybe I have one nephew that's a little skeptical, but he's that's just the way it is. Until you see it yourself, sometimes that's what it is. But my son is also an anthropologist, and he has a very deep interest. But of course, he used to go Bigfooting with us everywhere we went. So get him in there.
Yeah. Wow. So what are the highlights of your career?
In Bigfooting?
Yes.
Oh, I've had, I don't know, dozens of them. I mean, just, seeing footprints. I think a lot of ways that's your first connection to Bigfoot is when you are in the field and you see footprints for the first time. I think that's always exciting. One of my favorite ones is my husband and I had been working with a witness in Strawberry, California, and we just randomly were out driving, and we said, hey, let's just stop by and see if she's home and go from there. And she wasn't. She was gone. And it was the winter, and there was snow on the ground. And so we were just, casually, let's just check out the house, see if we see anything. And we found a set of footprints. coming out of the woods. You could see them beautifully in the snow. I mean, you want to talk about a good footprint. Snow is the best vehicle for that. And we followed the footprints, and we saw that it went up towards the house, and it stopped on the corner in the back of the house. And whatever, the Bigfoot looked around the corner to see if there was a car. And this had probably happened the night before, because they were beautifully intact, but just starting to melt because the sun was rising. It was like 10, 11 a.m. in the morning. And then it turned around and walked in its own footprints back around to the other side of the house, up to where she had a rock wall. And it gets up to the rock wall, and you can see where it jumped in the air and landed on 2 feet on the ground. You can see both prints, and then it took off running. The stride between the footprints now gets much larger, and it ran across the road and then down the hill on the other side. So basically wanted to run quickly across the road so it wouldn't be seen and get off to the other side. And it was just such an amazing thing, because nobody knew we were going to be there. There's no way anybody could stage it. Her nearest neighbor is probably 4 or 5 miles away. I mean, it's a remote area. And we were just like, what's the chances that we just happen to randomly show up and see these beautiful prints? And it was just, it was awesome in the sense of how clear they were, and that we could tell exactly what the animal was doing, that it was checking to see if it was safe to run through the yard and get over the road and go over to the other side.
Yeah, when you found those prints, how did you feel?
Well, I felt just blessed. I was just like, and see, we had been working with this lady for some time, and she just, had some great sightings, and we were just like, we stayed there. We camped at her spot for some time trying to get our own evidence, and we never had anything happen while we were there. And so this was just it felt good to validate what her experiences had been, that she was telling the truth, and she had all this activity around her house, and it made perfect sense. This house was kind of in a I don't even think she had running water, to think about it. Well, she had running water, but there was no pipes, as I recall. Okay. But it was in the perfect spot where every animal would travel. It was kind of like a natural pinch point in the mountains where you have to, it's the lowest spot of a pass. And so you always want to, get in that area where you don't have to walk too far uphill and then walk too far downhill. So it's just that perfect place where animals would funnel. And I remember we used to see other animals all the time. And so it just made me feel good that this lady had been telling the truth, and that we could tell her, hey, you're completely correct. You have a Bigfoot coming through here at least we never did figure out if it would come through at certain times of the year. That's what we were trying to if we're here June through September, is this when he comes through, or what? Because I believe in that they don't stay, they don't migrate like elk or anything like that. They pretty much stay in the same area, but they may come through a certain area at a certain time of the year, as they're gathering resources or they're searching out whatever they need. But we weren't able to figure that out for that lady.
Wow. So what's it like working with Native American tribes?
Oh, it's a joy. I mean, I work with them, for my national forest, that's part of my job of what I do. And so I'm working with them right now. We're going to do a gathering in early spring next year. And so we're trying to find the right place and location for how many people we think might be coming. But working with them on Bigfoot is like, 5% versus working with them as, in America, tribes are actually nations. And so they're just like working with France or Canada. So they're a sovereign nation under our how we recognize them. And so I have to be attentive to what they're asking for. And it's not like they ask for much. I mean, they just do their own thing kind of thing. But I try to help facilitate them living their traditional lives. So like if they want to gather traditional foods, medicines, that type of plants from the forest, I make sure that nobody bugs them when they're doing it, that they just feel free like they would if we weren't even here. They just go do what they need to do and get what they need for whatever they're doing. And it runs very smoothly for us because I've been here 25 years. And so I've got everybody pretty much trained. And so everybody, they just don't bug them. And so it's a lot of joy. That's probably my most favorite part of my job is when I get to go out with them and they teach me something. And sometimes I teach them things too, because I've been here so long and been out with the tribal elders who have now passed. I can pass on things that they told me or places that were important to them that they, may or may not know. And so that's a blessing. I really enjoy that part of my job.
That sounds a really amazing job to do, actually. So what can you tell me about the Alliance of Independent Bigfoot Researchers?
Oh, the AIBR. We're just a group of like-minded people who our goal is just to educate. We don't. So many times I get sent photographs, or mostly photographs that have no scale in them. And so they'll send me a photograph of a footprint that they think is Bigfoot and they want my opinion on it. But for all I know, it's a baby footprint, or it's there's no scale. So I can't tell you if it's 12 inches long, 4 inches long, and they don't even put like their own foot next to it or anything. There's no scale. And so that's our goal, is to teach people how to gather evidence in a scientific manner. And so, like if you see a Bigfoot and you find hair on a tree, use something sterile to gather the hair and then put it in a paper envelope and stick bag, because plastic degrades DNA. If you put it in an envelope, paper envelope, DNA will stay on that hair and then it can be tested.
That's fascinating. I never knew that.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of little things like that. Drawing, if you do find footprints, how do you cast them correctly? Do you want Patterson Gimlin, they picked the best right foot and the best left foot to cast. And so then later on, now his name's going to elude me, but the best thing to actually do is, if you have a row of 6 footprints, take a series of 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can get all 6, get all 6, but do it in a line. Don't take the best and the best, because what tells us more information is how that foot moves as it's going through that strata. So you can tell if it's real by looking at left, right in that stride. And so, and then how do you measure that? If you can take a drawing and maybe draw what those footprints look like, those kinds of things, like how do you do it scientifically? And that's essentially our main goal, education.
That sounds really amazing. And you've now taught me how to cast footprints and get hair from Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Have you ever researched or heard of any instances of sightings in the UK?
I haven't myself, but historically the woodwoos is a similar type animal, in the sense that it was a hair-covered man-like animal. And so, I mean, there's at least in legends there it's supported, but you have to have forested areas with water and enough resources for any species to survive. And so I would find it difficult to believe that there would still be enough territory for a Bigfoot to survive in Europe. But I haven't really ever heard of any stories either recent.
Yeah, I agree with you that there isn't enough forest and wild for it to sustain in the UK. So what is the most interesting fact that you have learnt about Bigfoot over your fascinating career?
Oh, fact. Well, I used to not make fun. That's probably not the nicest thing. I used to doubt when people would tell me that their sighting was they saw Bigfoot and then they're in their car and they wanted to get away from it, and the Bigfoot could keep up with the car for at least a short distance. And I used to go, oh, for crying out loud, cars can go 60 miles an hour. There's no way a Bigfoot can go 60 miles an hour. And then I had my experience and I thought, well, they probably were telling the truth that a Bigfoot, at least for a short distance, could keep up with a car. Why it would want to, I don't know. But if it happened, I believe that they were telling the truth. And so there's I always believed that Bigfoot would knock and whistled and all that stuff because that's in Native American tales. And so they talk about that all the time, that if you hear a whistle at night, don't go outside because that's a Bigfoot trying to lure you out of your house, out of your, outside so that you're exposed. So I always knew that stuff. I never had an issue. But I don't know of any Native American traditional beliefs that talked about their speed that convinced me that was something that they saw often. And so when then I saw it, I was all like, they're really, really fast. And I remember going back and I had some very strong friendships with tribal members in this area, and I mentioned it to them about my experience. And so we used to do, this is a funny story, so we do official meetings, where we're all sitting around and we're being all nicey nice, and I take notes and they go, okay, this is this. And then this elder would always go, okay, are we done with this meeting? And we go, yeah, I think we're done. He goes, okay, Kathy, what's going on with Bigfoot? And then we'd have this whole conversation and everybody would get involved kind of thing. But we always did it kind of off the record. And so I came back from this sighting and I said, Sonny, his name was Sonny, what do you think? This thing was fast. It went up this hill like lightning. And he goes, oh, yeah, didn't nobody told you that before? And I went, no, nobody mentioned that to me before. He goes, yeah.
I wish I knew that before.
And it was kind of like, I don't know. It's like this. Sometimes Native Americans, they like you to figure it out on your own. And then they go, oh, yeah, that's correct. That's what happens. And so I felt kind of like, shoot. But then again, I don't know, everybody's definition of fast is different. Kind of thing, my husband, when I'm walking in a store, he goes, stop walking so fast. And I'm like, I'm not walking fast, I'm just walking, kind of thing. So everybody's definition is a little bit different. But when he said that to me, I remember going, oh, dang, I wish I had thought that through a little more. I think I still would have been surprised, but I don't think I would have had quite the meltdown that I did, in the sense of feeling like I was at their mercy, in the sense. And I don't like feeling that way. I've been an archaeologist for 30 something years, and I know bear, I know rattlesnakes, I've seen it all, and I know how to respect it and move out of its way until it's done being a snake or being a bear. I respect that. But I felt like I don't know how to handle sharing a territory with a Bigfoot, in the sense of, well, what's my space? It seems like everything's yours. where's my space kind of thing. And it's just those things where you go back and you think about these weird things that would happen to me as an archaeologist. I'm out in the woods. I up until fairly recently, I always surveyed by myself. And by survey, I mean, we're looking for Native American sites or historic sites to locate them first and protect them before a project happens. So if we're going to build a new trail or if we're going to build a road, we have to make sure there's no archaeological resources in the way of whatever it is that we're going to do. And I always used to do that by myself. I never had, everybody's got something to do. And so I could handle this by myself. And, and then when you do big stuff, you have multiple people with you to try to get more land covered. And I can remember all these weird things that would happen when I was by myself, in the sense of, I remember one time when, you hear people talking about that gibberish, so the samurai sounds kind of thing.
Sierra sounds, yeah.
Yeah, the Sierra sounds. Well, actually, the Sierra sounds were recorded on my national forest, by the way. So,
oh, really?
Yes, that's from this location.
Wow.
And so I can remember being, really far out, and I was doing this survey, and I'm probably 5 miles or so from my car, and I start hearing somebody talking, and I'm like going, what in the world? And it sounded like Chinese or Japanese. And I thought, oh my God, we've got tourists out here that are lost because there's no reason for anybody to be out here. And I keep hearing it. And then I hear two voices and they're like talking back to each other. And I would go, hey, are you lost? And then it's still talking. And I'm like, hey, are you lost? Do you need some help? And then it stopped. And then I just thought, that's really odd. And so I just finished up what I was doing and walked back to my car. And it was the only place to park, and there was no other vehicles there. And I thought, okay, so either they're really lost or they got back to their car before I did and they drove. I just couldn't figure it out. Now I would say that probably was a Bigfoot that was having something, and I just I didn't know. And so there's those are kind of those things that if I had known then what I know now, what would I have done? What would I have gone towards the voices? Would I have, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done, especially by myself and knowing what I know now. I don't know. It could be the great thing, Kathy.
That sounds amazing that you heard chatter or like people talking. I would love to experience that.
I think I would. I think I would be trying to run away as fast as possible.
Are you aware there seems to be strange orbs or balls of light that surround Bigfoot? And what are your thoughts and feelings about this?
I have indeed heard that. I have personally never experienced that. I've never. People have shown me videos, and for me in the videos it's just dust blowing around, and the dust looks amazing when it's lit up by a FLIR or night vision. And I'm a scientist, and so you have to deal with things on a scientific basis, and I do not believe that Bigfoot is related to UFOs or has any kind of supernatural elements to it. I think it's just a flesh and blood animal. We're all animals. We're all, all animals. And so I don't put any stock in it. And then here again, if I see it and I can't explain it, then maybe my attitude will change. But I don't understand the purpose of what an orb is, because like I said, I've seen quite a few videos people have sent me, and I can I could go into my garage, take a broom, sweep at night, and I could get the same effect on night vision that they're producing. It's just dust. It's amazing what it looks like under night vision. It's pretty spectacular.
So taking that story, let me ask this: do you believe in UFOs?
No, in the sense of I don't know how to put this. I think it's very, very, very intriguing that we have some of those new videos that were taken by the United States military. So those Tic Tac videos, those are very difficult for me to explain. That is not technology that I believe we have, and I hope nobody else has that's on this planet. And so, I mean, I'm open to it in the sense that I can't easily explain what those videos show, but I'm also kind of in a spot of just say hi already. I mean, I don't understand why they would be still observing us, I guess is the best way to say, since we've been seeing it for a long time, and not be open to saying, hey, we're real. This is why we're here. This is why we're doing it. And so I'm leery of that. Because if they were going to destroy us, they'd already do it, right? They were going to take our resources. They'd already have done it. So what's up? Why are you still hanging around and not telling us that you're here? And so that's not what I understand. Intelligent beings certainly can recognize that we're intelligent. So, and then I always hear these things of these, how I was just saying this, that when I was a little girl, we had one television. Our phone was on the wall in the kitchen. You had one phone. And I remember my grandma, who rode in a covered wagon, going, we'll never get to the moon. We just don't have that kind of technology and kind of things. And then here we are, not all that long ago, how much technology we have gained. I mean, shoot, we have, chat, whatever that stuff is called, and artificial intelligence. So it does make you think, could we have developed this on our own so quickly, or have we had contact in the past and that we studied other